Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore, and time for another whiskey tasting. Today, headed to California and the Amador Whiskey Company. Now, this is a whiskey that while I was in Kentucky, I'd heard nothing about this whiskey. I just read the label and it sounded intriguing. So I said, okay, I'm going to give this thing a shot, see what it tastes like. And it wasn't overly expensive, so I thought, okay, I'll just give this one a shot. It's rare that I do that. Well, here we go. This is double barrel blended bourbon whiskeys finished with Chardonnay wine barrels from Napa Valley. And as I read about this, I read that basically they take anywhere from 3 to 10-year-old bourbons to make this blend. And this is really one of the first blended whiskeys that I gave a shot. And that was part of what got me interested in tasting this one. So on the back it says batch number 4, bottled in February of 2019, case number 2320. So interesting thing about this is that I record sometimes 1 or 2 or sometimes even 3 episodes in a day. And when I did the tasting on this whiskey, when I first started to nose it, I had just finished my video on Benromic 15. And I actually had to stop myself and say, I need to cleanse my palate because this is tasting a lot like that Benromic 15. So I have some stuff left over that is, I was getting berry, which I was getting from the Benromic 15. I was getting a little bit of smoke, which I got in the Benromic 15, and I said, okay, I got to cleanse my palate. So the first thing I did was I said, I have to do something drastic. So I went over and I grabbed a piece of ham, just a little slice of lunch meat ham, and put that on my palate. Well, here's the thing. When you do that, I went back and I did my tasting or my nosing, and I'm like, oh man. Then I tasted it and I said, no, this is having way too much influence on my palate in another direction, because now this whiskey tastes flat. I'm not really getting much personality out of it. So then I went over and I grabbed, and I'm not sponsored by Triscuits, but I'm obsessed by these cracked pepper and olive oil Triscuits. They're not the best thing for cleansing the palate. The reason is that the pepper is really intense on these and it will linger with you for a while. So if you're tasting a whiskey that has a pepper note, you're going to probably say it has a really intense pepper note. And if it doesn't have a pepper note, you're probably going to say it has a pepper note, because that's going to stay on your palate. And herein lies the problem of how do you cleanse your palate. I don't know what the perfect thing to do is, other than to just drink some water and then wait a while before doing your tasting. Because I've heard of using coffee to cleanse or to reset your nose. Some people have even said, just smell your arm, because you actually, your own fragrance, whatever it may be, as long as you don't have a lot of perfume on or something like that, or cologne, should help you reset your nose at least. But that doesn't do anything for your palate unless you lick your arm. Probably not going to do that. So you could, but then again, you probably have salts on your arm that are going to influence the flavor there as well. So anyway, best thing that I can suggest is just drink some water, take a break, go do something else, and come back. But I was still absolutely amazed by the fact that I had on my palate this leftover from Benromic 15 and how beautifully this complemented it. And what I'm going to tell you at this particular moment is that Benromic 15 is going to cost $105 a bottle. This is going to end up costing around, $35, $40 a bottle. I will have my first dram of Benromic 15, and I'm going to follow it by drinking this for the rest of the evening, because this is a beautiful complement for that Benromic 15. So I've had time to clear my palate, clear out I still have the memory of Ben Romick 15 and how beautifully this matched with it. So that may create a bias for me on this whiskey. But what's interesting about this is that this is same ABV almost. This is 43.6, I think. It is bourbon. It is not, so it's corn based. It is not malt based. So you would think that these would be very different from each other, but the similarities were amazing to me. So on the nose, I get that little hint of smoke is still there, lingering on. I don't know where that smoke is coming from. But there's also a heavy dose of oak on this and leather. Let me rephrase that, or say that a different way. It is the oak, the leather note of oak is a dominant part of this nose, but it is not like smoking an oak or like smelling an oak bomb. It is subtle. Everything about this whiskey that I've noted so far has been subtle. It's not so subtle that I can't smell it. It's there. It's just that it's a nice, pleasant, slightly leathery oak note that comes through. And I try to hunt for things that remind me of bourbon. And the only thing that I really can get out of it is a floral vanilla that comes in on the nose. But I almost want to say that I'm smelling fruit in this whiskey, which as a Scotch drinker, I'm saying, okay, honestly, for bourbon, that's going to draw me in and make me very interested in this whiskey. Okay, cheers. The toffee comes through on the palate much more here. So it's acting a little bit more like a bourbon on the palate. I get a little of the vanilla in there. I get some brown sugar in there. And I hear all the Scotch drinkers going, okay, you've turned me off now. I have no interest. I'm telling you right now that these are all not overly sweet notes. They're not dry. They're just sweet enough that, to me, they kind of match the sweetness that you get in Speyside scotches. And so it doesn't really, to me, taste like a bourbon all the way around. It has bourbon characteristics to it, but honestly, I could maybe, and this is probably not a perfect analogy because Auchentoshan is more of a citrusy kind of thing, but when you think about a Speyside Scotch that has, or a Lowland Scotch that has a lot of bourbon influence on it, that's more of what I'm getting here. And I think that's the reason why it was very easy for me to move over from Ben Ray 15 over to Amador, because to me, this has much more of a Scotch personality to it than it does a bourbon personality to it. Now, this is a blended whiskey, so I don't know if you get a bottle, if you're going to have the same experience out of it that I had. I will also say that I've had this bottle for a long time. As I told you, this is a 2019 bottling, so this has been around for a long time. A lot of time to oxidize, so I don't know how much it's changed. This has always been a whiskey that sat in my cabinet, and I've looked at it and I've gone, you know, you bought that for a reason. Why are you not drinking it? But for some reason, on its own, I never really found a reason to drink it. But now that and maybe part of what's drawn me away from tasting this or drinking this is the fact that it says double barrel and it says bourbon, and that puts us in a mindset of something that's going to really have a lot of charred oak characteristics in it. Something that's going to give you those heavy vanilla flavors, and that because it's bourbon, it's going to have that very heavy caramel toffee kind of an experience. But it really does not. This is a nicely refined whiskey. I'm not going to put this in a category with the top-notch bourbons in the world or the top-notch whiskeys in the world. I'm going to put this in the good category, edging towards very good, because to me, for my palate, it is a whiskey that is a beautiful complement more to scotches than it would be to bourbons. And if there were one thing that I would tell the company that makes this, is that I'm not 100% sure on your branding, because your branding gives this Old West double barrel shotgun. I think, you kind of get this Wild West kind of a feel out of the branding. And I think, honestly, this is much more of a refined whiskey that needs to have a more elegant presentation to it, and really needs to, look like something that particular buyer is going to be attracted to. Because when I bought it, yes, the word Chardonnay cask got me intrigued, but I just didn't quite get it once I got it home. And it wasn't until I tasted it right after drinking that Benromic 15 that I went, whoa! I have not been thinking about this whiskey the right way. This is a whiskey that is a beautiful complement to a slightly smoky, fruity, especially berry type Speyside Scotch, or any Scotch, maybe a Highland Scotch that brings some of those same characteristics. I'm going to do some experimentation with it, because I now have a completely different impression of this whiskey, and likely it's going to empty out a lot faster than it has been. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and if you learned something from this, or if I turned you on to a new snack, maybe I have to reach out to the people who makes Triscuits. I was expecting like Nabisco or somebody like that, but nope, not. So who knows? Maybe they will work with me on something like that. Definitely not when I'm doing peppery whiskeys, though. Until next time, I was saying, like the video if you got some good information out of it, subscribe, all of that stuff that we YouTubers have to say to survive in this world. Until next time, cheers and Slàinte mhath.